Hello, this is Adam from Carpe Omnis Games here once again to talk about making fantasy cities using the book that I've been working on, Crooked Alleys. This particular video is probably not going to actually use the book much. There's a bunch of advice in the book for how to come up with good names for things and how to place things on maps and what sorts of stuff generally shows up in a city, but I'm not really going to be, rolling on random tables with my dice or anything like that for the most part. There is something that was pointed out to me after I finished my previous video, once people had seen it, that I forgot to put the religions on the list of factions that I had made. So I'm going to fix that today and roll some faction quirks for them on the faction quirks table. Something that I'm going to have in the final book that I don't have right here is I'm planning on expanding, just as an incidental aside, I'm planning on expanding the neighborhood quirks table from a D20 table to a D100 table because I kept getting the same thing too many times when I was rolling on that previously, and I didn't quite like that. So we're going to see a few more of those in the final book, 80 more options to be precise. I've already come up with, another dozen or so that I've added there, and I'm not going to re-roll any of those today because, I already have them and I've already been getting ideas for them. I've let this sit for a few days, this example city document. I haven't touched it for a few days, just let it sit and, thought up some ideas. Now, let's talk about these religions. There's two religions in town, in the city of Rothport, one that started in there and one that's a foreign religion, which has two temples in significant locations. Now, that makes things really interesting because I could have it be, I could interpret the roles that I got in that there's a foreign religion that had some important religious event happen in the city, and so now there's a bunch of pilgrims from another country that come here regularly, but I prefer to have it so there's multiple religions in town because that makes it more interesting for, potential conflicts and adventures that you might have. So, going to add in the hometown religion and the foreign religion. And I don't have this done quite yet, but in the final book I'm going to have some tables for generating cults, and which you could expand to full religions if you wanted to. So you could roll on those for creating these religions in the final book, but right now I'm just going to roll really fast in the faction quirks table because that'll give us some easy stuff to help define the character of these people. So for hometown religion, I just rolled a natural 20, which is roll twice more and combine the results. So a 4. Let's see. 4 is fanatical. That makes a lot of sense. And then a 17 is paranoid. This faction, or at least its leadership, is absolutely convinced of the existence of an unseen menace threatening to either themselves or society as a whole, and takes drastic steps to fight it. So that makes for an interesting religion right there. Now, the faction uniform for the hometown religion is 3. Specific article of clothing used to identify faction members as a certain kind of hat, sash, or brooch. So the priests have some sort of special kind of clothing that they wear, like how there's specific clothing in real life that priests wear. Like, no one aside from priests wears a cassock or a whatever those hats are called. You know what I mean. Now, this foreign religion, these people who've got the temples in the wealthy district and the docks district, I think it was. For them, I rolled a 15. Traditional. Again, that makes sense for a religion. The history of this faction goes back a very long way, with many traditions that may not make sense anymore, but which are adhered to anyway. So, what this tells us is that the foreign religion is probably older than the hometown religion. Maybe it was here beforehand, even. Well, no, if it was here beforehand, the temples wouldn't be expat communities. So, it's an old religion that is just now branching out into this city. And meanwhile, the hometown religion is fanatical and paranoid. That is going to make for an interesting combination. So, the uniform for the foreign religion is clothing of a certain color. There's a specific color associated with this faction. I love it. All right. So now we've got those briefly identified. Let's go through and start naming some things. Now, places of interest in the Noble District. We have two important fortifications, the Lady Governor's House and the Hunting Reserve. I'm going to call it the Banning Reserve, the old site of House Banning, who used to run the town. And now the Lady Governor's name, I'm thinking something that starts with an S. The Silvari Estate? I like that as a name. Lady Silvari is the Lady Governor. And she is definitely a wizard. Because that makes things a lot more interesting. So it's easy to come up with just random names off the top of my head. Coming up with names for important fortifications is a little more difficult than coming up with people's names or names of characters. A revolutionary fortification. The People's Guard. Okay, so the People's Guard defend this fortification. That's the name of the military force that answers to the Advisory Council and the people as a whole, rather than to the Lady Governor. What do we want to call that, though? Probably something pretentious, like Fort Liberty. No, let's just... Let's call it Fort Liberty until further notice. Now this one is... No, that's a little too ostentatious. Actually, fuck it. The Dread Fort is where the actual the Imperial military is stationed. The heretofore unnamed empire that runs the town. Throughout this, I think I'm just going to call it the Empire and Imperial and whatnot, so that you can slot this into whatever empire makes sense in your setting. Not really going to make that too thorough. So it's an important fortification. It's confusing to get around, intentionally built that way to confuse invaders, and large portions of it are underground. So, the Dread Fort is where the Imperial military is stationed. They don't like Fort Liberty and answer only to the Lady Governor. and to their distant masters of the Empire. So if the commander of the fort receives sealed orders from the Empire, he will follow those instead of the Lady Governor. So we've got some names and reputations and brief descriptions for these places of interest in the Noble District. Let's go to the slums. An artistic enclave, historically significant because famous artists have come out of there. Let's think. What would a place like that be named? Something Gardens, I'd imagine. It's like some sort of bohemian name. I'm not gonna just call it Bohemian Gardens like I just wrote down, though. Okay. I like that. Okay, the Proffer Gardens neighborhood is an artistic enclave, historically significant, full of dirt poor artists hoping to make it big. I don't know if anyone's going to be really interested in watching me just come up with names for all of these. I thought about doing this, not recording it and just coming to it later and saying, hey, these are all the names and descriptions that I came up with for all of these. But I don't know, maybe someone will be interested in this. I'll do a rundown of everything at the end of the video. So if you want to just skip to the end and see the last, like, 5 minutes of me talking through everything that I write down here, feel free. Let's see, rundown park or fairground, dangerous. Oh yeah, see, reading this reminds me, I had thought about having some height difference in the city so that like the slums were physically much lower than the heights. But then I remembered that the city flooded. That was the major disaster, and it wouldn't be a major disaster if large portions of the city didn't get flooded. So I can't really use that here. However, these tenements can be built on the water. Okay, so these tenements are built up on the floodplain near the harbor, and it's not a good place to live because stuff kind of collapses here occasionally and floods come through and it's hard to get around. Things are built up weirdly and confusingly, and you can sneak around underneath people's houses in canoes unless a flood comes along and like crushes you against the underside of someone's house, which might happen. Not a super good place, but at least it's not as dangerous as the park. Which I'm going to say, the park is still like half flooded and is full of like quicksand and mud and dead trees and living trees and strange creatures that have crawled out of the sea. And that's why people don't really live there anymore. It never recovered from that major flood in the city's history. And all kinds of weird shit is said to live there now. People go into it occasionally, but not after dark. Certainly not after dark. So Kelly Park, which also needs some sort of badass name. Kelly Park, also known as the Hole or something like that. Also known as the Sea Pit, the Salt Pit. Yes, Kelly Park, also known as the Salt Pits. That's a right, proper, dangerous bit of wilderness in the middle of the city. Cheap inns that doesn't ask questions with a tragic history. So, I actually have a random inn name generator, or random tavern name generator in this book. If I can fucking find it. There we go. So let's come up with a name for this cheap inn. Let's see. The Floating and one. Okay. The Floating Minotaur Tap House is what I rolled. So the Floating Minotaur Tap House it is. Which kind of makes me think that maybe this inn is floating, since the row upon row of tenements with unusual geography, or like built above, on stilts above the floodplain, is near there. So the Floating Minotaur Tap House is built so that it floats when it floods. Like a boat, but less sturdily built. Now, the Floating Minotaur Tap House is renowned for being a place where you go to get murdered. Tragic history is just, it's the most disreputable place to the point where people don't... No, tragic history, previous owner did something terrible. The place rebranded and is now owned by someone else, maybe a relative, but people still remember the fact that the previous owner was poisoning people and stealing their shit and then dumping them into the water off the back of the floating tap house. And so people have been kind of leery of going back to it, despite it being under new management or with a new name. Boom. Row upon row of tenements with unusual geography. I'm just going to call this the stilts. So the stilts are built upon, is a part of the slum district, like lots. This is where everyone in the slum district lives, basically, except for the people in Proffer Gardens and those poor unfortunates who have to live in Kelly Park. The stilts is not the name of the entire district, but probably could be used to refer to the district in slang if people knew what you were talking about. This is just a wooden maze built out on the water with above the water and above the floodplain. And hopefully you built it up high enough so that the flood won't come knocking on your lower windows. All right, so I'll flesh these out a bit more with some, fancy, well-written description before I put them in the book. Now, this commercial district, there's a conflict going on at a small niche marketplace, presumably between the vicious trading company that we have and someone else. Possibly the shipmaker? Which one is this? This is the commercial district. Between the trading company and, you know what? Between a lot of local merchants. That can let the players fight on the side of the underdog if they want. So let's see. What kind of marketplace is this? You know what? I have a random artisan table that I'm just going to roll on. D30 table right now. I should probably expand that. There we go. Ah, fell off the table. Okay, so it's a 19 shipwright. That doesn't work for this, actually. What kind of industry is this? Area. Sail and or rope maker. Okay. Small niche marketplace. And I keep rolling things to do with naval stuff. So actually, maybe this is a marketplace for ships. People who are selling ships or have made a new ship or want to commission a ship, come here. Yeah, actually, I like that. Or for buying stock and trade voyages. So like you put up some money and that's used to buy trade goods which go on the ship, and then when it comes back, having made a profit, you get some of the money. I imagine that sort of system would be well open to scams, but also would make some people who do it well very rich. Possibly. So, okay. Let's call this the Naval Exchange. Is that the right spelling of naval? Let's look this up. No, it's not. There we go. And a fortunate private docks. This is clearly the domain of the trading company. Now this trading company, which we wrote down previously, this is clothing of a specific color identifies members of the faction. So whatever that color is probably you know, the dock is probably named after that color, right? So I'm just gonna Google for a random color generator. That's less helpful than I thought it would be. I don't want a color name in hex. I want a just specific name of a color. Okay. This is less inspiring than I had hoped it would be. One of those was smoke. That would be an interesting... Ooh, Jasper. That's a good word. Jasper. Jasper smoke? Wait, no, shit. That was the wrong window. I'm going to write that down as the leader of the trading company. It's a good name. The Green Ducks, or no. Smoke Ducks? Let's say the Gray Ducks, since his name is Smoke. And their colors of the trading company will be green and gray, I think. So, okay. The Naval Exchange, the Gray Ducks. Landmark, an under construction meeting hall. Magical. Presumably, this is a place where that the Merchant Council is building. A meeting hall. This is this is going to be got to be some sort of commercial exchange, right? Like a stock market or something like that. This should be some sort of name with like something like the one word is what I'm getting here, like the exchange, but I already used exchange for the ship marketplace. So the something. Thesaurus. Why not? Just gonna look up commerce words. Exchequer. I may be mispronouncing that, but that's a fucking good name. A good word. Ooh, reserve. Yes. The Grand Reserve is going to be the greatest bank and commodities exchange in the city. However, tragedy struck when the magical construction was... the construction's been halted after a series of seemingly magical accidents have struck the workmen. There we go. So now what we have is a confusing diplomatic embassy. You know, just to keep things making sense and keep the number of things to keep track of down a little, I'm going to say that this is the diplomatic embassy for whatever country the expat religion is from. So... call them Dorn. I just made that name up. The Dornish, is that a real thing? Oh, that's something from Game of Thrones. Okay, stop telling me things. Steam and Uplay. Okay, there we go. So maybe not Dorn. Now I'm just thinking of other things that end in Orn. Norn. It's already a thing, but hell with it. I like it. It's going to be there. The Norn embassy, diplomatic embassy, confusing. They don't build things the way... Nornish architecture does not fit imperial standards. Okay. Nornish architecture does not match imperial standards, so it's easy for imperial citizens to get lost in the embassy. Ambassador Facile oversees, or Ambassador Facile likes to ensures that, wait, no, I deleted the name, that wasn't. Okay. Ambassador Facile ensures that Nornish citizens in the city are treated well and tries to spread the Norn religion on the side. Okay. So places of interest, rope yards. That probably belongs to the shipmaker. You know, these could just be called the rope yards. That's a cool enough name that it doesn't need anything else, really. Now, the religious temple or shrine by the expat community. So, this is, we've established the Norn religion, or the religion from the country, nation state, kingdom, empire, whatever, of Norn. So what is this religion called? Now, it's associated with a color, we know, because of our roll down here. So, what color? Random color name generator. Let's see. These are very specific colors. I just want like blue or green or something. I already have Jasper for the trading company. So what are we thinking here? Red seems obvious. Could do purple or yellow. Purple, yellow, blue. I just want like a basic color. Kind of hitting random on this repeatedly. Let's go with purple. So, do we want to use... There's 2 temples of this in the city, so we probably don't want to use the name, the color for both of them. The Lilac Chapel. All right. Nornish sailors come to the Lilac Chapel for blessings before voyages. Now, there's also private docks that is an expat community, and we've established that the Nornish are the expats here for the most part. So... or unless we want to start up another expat community. That might be interesting, but no, I think these belong to the church. We've got the gray docks that belong to the trading companies. Now let's have the purple docks that belong to the Nornish church. Now the shipyard. All right. So what do we want to call this? August person. Could just be August Shipyard. August and Sons Shipyard. I like that. So the shipmaker is named August. And
it's not supported yet.
What? I accidentally turned on my echo somehow with that. That was interesting. So the shipmaker's name is August, and he or she, I suppose. Even he or she. Even he. Okay, that was a 12. So he and his sons run the shipyard and are also majorly on the advisory council. There we go. Now the religious district. This is the imperial religion or the Rothsport religion at any rate. What do we want to call this religion? They're more formally dressed than the Nornish one, but the Nornish ones are more traditional because they do have that trait. So there's conflict within the charitable order. Brotherhood of the Open Hand. No, wait. Sanctity of the Open Hand. There are multiple factions within the Open Hand, arguing about the best ways to treat the sick and raise the poor up out of poverty. Everyone involved has the best of intentions, which only makes the arguments worse. Now, the headquarters of the major religious figure. This needs some sort of really cool name. The Prudentian. I just made that word up, but it sounds cool. It's a massive cathedral that is home with like stained glass everywhere, statues, the whole nine, like buried saints in the foyer, the whole 9 yards. Massive cathedral that is... No, if I call the High Priest the highest one, then that's going to lead to way too many Snoop Dogg jokes. Can't do that. I know the people I play with too well for that. The Prudentian. Massive cathedral. Home to the... I'm going to come back and give the Imperial Religion a actual name later. Possibly not during this video. I'm just kind of skimming through this. I'll go back in and add the detail later before I publish it. I just want to see you to see how this sort of stuff, the roles that I did last time, would fit together into providing the detail for all these different places. Prudentian, massive cathedral that's home to the High Priest of the Imperial Religion. Lots of catacombs and secrets because hell yeah. Ritual sacrifice site. Right out in the open. Huh. That's interesting. Oh. Ritual sacrifice site. Strange architecture. Let's say this is a pyramid. Because I'm not picturing pyramids anywhere else in the city. I'm just going to make up another word for it. Built on the site of the event that inspired this religion 200 years ago. They reenact the sacrifice in order to regain its powers or something like that. So now there's a very well-funded and very fortunate and well-respected church militant. Which, honestly, maybe I should make the church militant its own faction within a faction and roll some quirks for them. But for the moment, let's just come up with a good name for them. So I have the Prudentian and the Culotte, or however I wrote the word. I don't know how to pronounce it, I guess. But we have those formal sounding names for these major buildings having to do with this religion. So the church militant should probably have a name to do with the religion itself, which I don't know the name of yet. I'm going to come back to this, actually. I'm going to come back to that after I've come up with more details about this religion, because that's really what's going to drive the church militant. Once you know what the religion's about, naming the different parts of it becomes a lot easier. And honestly, I don't know what the religion's about yet. So I'm going to come down here. Rows of expensive townhouses, revolutionary. Probably because the merchant classes were behind the revolution. And the merchants, the wealthy merchant class still kind of thinks of themselves as being revolutionary and, for the people, like men and women of the people. So let's come up with a suitably pretentious name for this. For this neighborhood. Let's see. Rows of expensive townhouses. Bearings. Townhouses and well-lit, well-patrolled streets of Bearings make up most of the district. If someone in Rothport tells you that they're from Bearings or they've got a house in Bearings, then you know that they're wealthy. I'm going to cut down here because I had a good idea for the name for this place. The Promenade is where the high-end shops are. This street is in the center of Bearings and has magic terrain. Specifically, the street loops around itself into weird ways. So you can find little side streets that don't technically exist on any map where interesting shops are. So this is like the upper class version of that cliche where you find a shop, buy a weird magic item, and then come back later to find that it's not there anymore. Except this is the Promenade, so everything is super classy. It's a good place for buying unique stuff. Except these shops charge what they should for magic items instead of asking for pennies or whatever. Necropolis. Historically significant necropolis. The Heroes Field. This isn't a Pauper's Field. This is crypts. This is the Honored Dead. Gershing Necropolis. Alright, the martyr of the imperial religion is buried here, as well as almost every important citizen that Rothsport has ever had. So in the wealthy district, there is also a Nornish temple, which let's call The Royal Temple. Okay. So this is something that I'm going to expand a lot on in my when I expand this for the book. But the Royal Temple is a prestigious upscale temple where the Nornish Church is trying to attract more wealthy followers, and it's becoming fashionable to attend services there from time to time, or like be seen there, and like to appear more worldly or more interested in spiritualism. So that is the wealthy district. I'll come up with names for these districts at some point as well, the districts as a whole. Oh, the artisan district. This one is really weird as shit, actually. A haunted artistic enclave, an academy of arts with cults, a bureaucratic office with magic trained tragic. This sounds like a prison, actually. Frostcrown Prison. Magic terrain is... It's a magic prison. People don't like it much because enemies of the state used to be imprisoned there before the Peaceful Revolution. Also, in Rothsport criminal slang, being sent to jail is being crowned. Because of Frostcrown Prison. I like it. I like that a lot. The public market. Magic terrain. Also magic terrain. We're getting a lot of magical marketplaces here, which kind of fits the sort of Venetian vibe we've got going in the city. Oh, hey. The roving market. The roving market travels all over. The roving market travels all over the district, appearing in between buildings and streets where there really shouldn't be any room for it. You can buy... Aside from that, it's a normal market. Let's say you can buy most anything here. Now, it's not just a normal market. Let's head that idea off at the pass. So, a haunted artistic enclave. That sounds fascinating, tragic, and gothic. Fuck it. Let's name it after Edgar Allan Poe. Welcome to the Raven Quarter. Alright, done. The Raven Quarter. This place is super gothic. Haunted artistic enclave. I love it. I love it, I love it. Now, the Academy of Arts, which is infested with cults as it happens. That's... Alright. I'm feeling some sort of Lovecrafty vibe. I'm kind of thinking of names inspired by that mythos. Innswich Dun... Oh, okay. Dunswich Aethelwick. Aethelwick Academy. Alright, so this district is fucking weird, but I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. So, the industrial district. Smelly industrial neighborhood where the titan of smelly industry lives and works. Let's just call it the Tanner's Quarters. Call it what it is. The Tanner's Quarter. I need to come up with a name for this guy at some point. The Titan of Industry. Now, a fortunate, loud industrial neighborhood. What sort of loud industry would be in a city like this? Blacksmithing? It's a floodplain. There's a lot of naval industry going on in the city. This is probably woodworking of some kind, especially for ships. Carpenter's Quarter. You know, the Tanner's Quarter, the Carpenter's Quarter, and this will be Sailmaker's Quarter. And then shabby but proud tenements that still have revolutionary... The people who live here still have revolutionary fervor and still, like, believe in the advisory council and their political... their ability to influence politics, basically, is how this area works out. So this is the trade rows. Living down in the trade rows. So I think the main industry of the city is building ships. That's really what I'm getting out of this. All right. So notorious crime bosses made their lair in the sailmaker's quarter. The sailmaking industry abandoned this quarter and moved closer to the docks when Mr. August started getting his sales from big looms that he wanted closer at hand, leaving this area kind of run down and depressed before the gangs moved in. Boom. I love it. Now our last one is the educated district. And so we have an area where publishing houses, bookbinders, and scribes live that is haunted. So that's interesting. Pulp Row. Hell yeah. Haunted by the ghost of an overdramatic author. No. You know what? This place seems like it's the sort of that would have more leaning towards Renaissance kind of industry. So I'm going to say that there are like publishing houses that put out books and pamphlets and like cheap stuff for the masses to read. So, the hack presses and the master bookbinders both work out of Pulp Row. The hack presses and the master bookbinders both work out of Pulp Row, putting out literary material of more or less merit. And Pulp Row is also haunted. But, I don't know by what yet. I'll figure that out later. Revolutionary Sport Field. So this was probably built by the Revolution. Let's call this... No, not the People's Field. That sounds dumb. Revolutionary. Is this... Triumph Fields. Games to celebrate the successful and peaceful revolution are held here every year. I like that. That's the Triumph Field games could be a very good time for a heist if you're thinking about having some interesting events in your game, to changing up the structure of the city for one night or set of nights. So a fortunate street of alchemists and wizards. So this is going to be the alchemists and wizards who've made it. The students of philosophy and sorcery who have, you know, become respected members of the community instead of being viewed as mad lunatics on the corner or mad lunatics grubbing through dungeons and whatnot. So... this is Goldwith Street. You go to Goldwith Street to get your sorcerers and your wizards. I don't think it really needs any more detail than that, really. The nature of what that should be is probably self-evident, right? So, and the final area is a debate hall where the peaceful revolution started and where matters of political philosophy are still, to this day, discussed in detail. Maybe this is something for the random tavern name generator. 13 wet. Wet Queen. No, I'm not doing that. Okay, something queen, though. I'm going to reroll the first one. Mad Queen. Oh, yes. The Mad Queen Ale House. Hell yes. Yes. Perfect. Beautiful. All right. Now that we have names for all of these places, well, we don't have names for the districts themselves. That's kind of an oversight. Let's look in on these. We have a noble district, slum district, docks district. So that's 9 districts. All right, we can come up with names for these real fast. Or actually, how long have I been recording? An hour? I'm getting kind of hungry. I might leave this for next time. I think I'm going to name the different districts in between videos, and then next video, lay all this out on a map. And then that'll probably be my last video for the construction of Rothsport, and I'll do everything else behind the scenes because it's going to be a lot of me sitting around trying to think of ideas and the right way to word something, and you don't really want to watch that. It's going to take a while. It's going to be just more of what I just did. But anyway, that's how you would take the roles from the random tables that I've been using in Crooked Alleys to tell you how to make a city. So you take your district types, roll on the table for each district to figure out what's in it. Roll on the neighborhood quirks tables. Roll on the faction tables. And at the end of the day, you get a completely unique city. With a unique political structure, all kinds of secrets, all kinds of conflicts pre-built into it that can spur adventures, all kinds of different factions fighting each other that your players can ally with or stage heists against. We got a city here with room for a lot of different adventures, which is exactly what these random tables and this chapter and this book is meant to provide you with. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Once again, this has been Adam from Carpe Omnis Games. And now I'm going to stop working on this for a bit and go get some dinner because it's a little late here at this point. See you next time.